Railway Conversations with Doc Frank.
Hi, this is Doc Frank. Welcome back to my podcast. My guest today is Steve Boshier, the current global president of the IRSE, that is the Institution of Railway Signal Engineers. Steve has been in the railway industry for over 40 years, originally from New Zealand. He has dipped back and forth between New Zealand and Australia. He's also been to a few other countries in Southeast Asia. And we will have an interesting and deep discussion about his current presidency of the IRSE and what that means for his normal life. We are talking about differences in the signaling industries in New Zealand and Australia. We talk about big projects, small projects, the differences, criticism of projects and how justified they are, and a lot more. Please enjoy this conversation, but before we start... Hi, this is Doc Frank. Let me jump in here right now to tell you about a new training which is called High Capacity Signaling Blueprint. This is a very unique all-in-one training that gives you everything you need to know about high-capacity signaling. The foundations where you can compare what conventional signaling is to what high-capacity signaling is with all the necessary definitions. Then we look at CBTC, communications-based train control, as the prime technology for high-capacity signaling and how this is done. In the third part of the training, we look at varieties of the European Train Control System, ETCS, another global train control technology, and how this can be used to achieve high-capacity signaling. And then at the end of the training comes an actual blueprint how to apply CBTC or ETCS to get a real high-capacity outcome for your railway. It's basically 3 training courses in one. And as usual for my trainings, there is a study group available for joint learning with other people taking the same training. And after the training, you will get into an alumni community, which is exclusive for my training students, where you can ask questions and get them answered by myself on an ongoing basis for a guaranteed minimum of 12 months. You can sign up on my usual training platform, which is docfranktraining.podia.com/HCS Blueprint. I said it again, docfranktraining.podia.com/HCS Blueprint, with HCS being the acronym for High Capacity Signaling. If it's important for you to learn about the latest trend in railway signaling, which is high capacity signaling, then this is the training for you. Steve, welcome to the show.
Yeah, good afternoon, and thank you, Doc Frank.
Thanks for being here. Thanks for making the time. I appreciate you are a very busy person, both in your program-wide role at the level crossing removal program in Melbourne. We will talk about that. And also, of course, as the sitting president, global president of the IRSE, the Institution of Railway Signaling Engineers. And of course, we will talk about that as well. But as a starter, maybe as a warm-up, I've known you. You're actually one of the persons that I have known longest in the Australian rail industry. And the point in time when I first met you, I think was in 1996 or 97, something like that. You were busy with having your own consultancy. You were an independent consultant at that point in your career. But before that and after that, you have probably more than anyone really swung back and forth between work in New Zealand, where you're originally from, and also work in Australia. And what the question that I had looking at that was whether over your career you have seen any fundamental differences between the signaling industry in New Zealand and the signaling industry in Australia, or is it basically just more of the same, like between one state in Australia and another?
Yep. No, I think you're right, Dr. Frank. I've over my career, which has spanned quite a fair while, differences between New Zealand market and Australia is really just economy of scale, really. I think we've been very fortunate here, and part of the reason I'm back doing major projects work as I am at the moment is, the dollar spend is big here in Australia. Having said that, I did spend 3 years over in Auckland helping them to set up with City Rail Link. That's the biggest project ever for them over there. But again, when you look at the comparative spend of even that project compared to what I'm currently working on, there's a significant quantum difference here. And I think the other thing for New Zealand that works against them in one respect is they don't have the resource pool, the local resource pool and the expertise there. So they've got to bring in quite a lot from overseas, which is what they've been doing. And again, that tends to drive their price, the base of their price up. Kiwis are very good at being articulate and trying to sort of keep prices or come up with, I was going to say cheap and cheerful, but fit for purpose type solutions there without spending more than is absolutely necessary. So again, I actually take my hat off to them. I think they've got a long, thin rail network over there. But again, it works well. And then they've continued to invest into it. The other challenge that they has just been years of underinvestment as well. So they're playing particularly recently, somewhat some catch up there. Though no often on their own with that as well. As again, I see pockets of that have occurred here in Australia as well as other countries around the world.
Yeah. I noticed this underinvestment for a long period of time. I can remember we were at a conference, it must have been an IRSE one in the late 90s in Wellington. And we had dinner, and I can remember I was sitting next to the sales director of a competing company. And he basically whispered in my ear, said, well, if you can sell anything to these guys, I'll buy you a very good bottle of wine. Yeah, so that kind of indicated the difficulty that was there for a long period of time to do some investment or any investment in New Zealand. But I think Auckland did a lot of good things with their signaling renewals a few years back, which also included the introduction of ETCS Level 1. And at the moment, there are plans out there, as you probably know, to renew the signaling in Wellington and the entire Wellington suburban network, most likely with ETCS Level 2. At least that was a strategy when I saw it the last time. I was part of developing and reviewing the business case over there. So it is, from a signaling investment perspective in New Zealand, a better time probably than it has been for many decades. Yeah. So right now it looks rather promising.
Well, I think it is, and they've also benefited. If I'm thinking back around 2000, it was around 2009. I was working for what was Invensys Rail at that stage, and we won the Auckland resignaling job. You're right. It again, timing wise for Kiwi Rail, it was very good because Invensys was able to provide a very elegant solution there with their West Trace Mark II with axle counters, and you're right, with ETCS Level 1. And again, that was primarily designed to provide them with a greater level of safety, particularly at some key junction points, and it's worked incredibly well for them. And you're right, they are now progressing ahead with a Level 2 strategy, actually well ahead and to a greater extent than a lot of Australia is. So I take my hat off to them. They've probably got a bit of a jump on things there as well. And Wellington can only benefit from that. There's been a number of updates of interlocking technologies occur over there and track circuiting and signals over the period of time. They're careful with their spend, but they seem to be spending it in the right places as well.
I'd like, what just came to my mind, I'd like to stress test one of the assumptions that I keep telling people in my training courses when I talk about ETCS deployments in our part of the world, in Australia and New Zealand. And I take Auckland as a rather positive example, because they actually finished off the rollout of ETCS level 1 across the entire suburban network in a comparably short amount of time. Comparably, if you compare it with like Sydney, for example, what they have done with their ETCS level 1. And my hypothesis as an explanation for that was that there was a point in time, obviously KiwiRail had a clear idea what they wanted, but they also consulted with the potential supplier at the time, which was Invensys. And I think then came a point where the client organization just got out of the way of the contractor and actually let them install the signaling and the ETCS hand in glove in a way that Invensys was confident it would work. And I thought that was one of the secrets why this project didn't take so terribly long and why the outcome was actually quite good. Would you confirm that? I mean, you've been involved in that project as well.
I think one of the key benefits that actually really helped make the work in a timely fashion was there was also the procurement occurred for the new rolling stock at the same time that the signalling was being implemented as well. And yeah, I know firsthand prior to meeting yourself, you're right, in the mid-90s, I had been previously working up in the Pilbara and up on Hammersley Iron as it was then, which is Rio Tinto now. One of the projects, well, actually the major project I was brought in to actually manage and implement up there at that stage was what we called ICSS, Integrated Control Signalling System. And that was a complete resignaling of their railway. We were implementing ATP, in-cab signalling, new comms, new train control. The benefit that we had then to be able to roll out a new signalling was we actually purchased a new fleet of locomotives at exactly the same time. So I got involved with the loco purchase project lead as well, and was heavily involved as we were scoping up for the locos to ensure that we had adequate allowance for the fitment of all the signalling equipment we were putting on board, because there was, in those days, 3 computers, we had cable runs and a whole raft of different challenges.
Yeah.
Again, by doing that and coordinating with the loco delivery, it allowed us to progressively roll out a complete overlay control, signalling control right across 400 kilometres of rail network. That worked fabulously well. And again, what I saw with Auckland, again, with both the technology Westinghouse had, they were able to provide an overlay rollout. And you're right, with the ETCS, the new rolling stock was fitted up with that. And yeah, again, these days, we're putting more and more signalling equipment on board rolling stock locomotives. And it's that whole coordination piece which actually provides the opportunity, if you get it right, to do it in a much more timely fashion.
Yeah.
And I think other rail operators have been more challenged by that, particularly where they're trying to fit existing rolling stock, and that's not always ideal. It can be done, and obviously there's large investment there, but you've then got to be able to manage the fleet and be able to get it in, to get the fitment. And based on my experience, even with a new fleet of locomotives, there's always some variances there. And I've seen some of the challenges up in Queensland that they've had with some of their rolling stock as well. There's always some little tweaks along the way that have to be made.
Yeah, and some proper planning needs to be done as well. I mean, especially if you do a rolling retrofitment program on existing rolling stock, which means you need to take rolling stock out of service. There needs to be a plan for that. Yeah, normally operations doesn't have spare rolling stock sitting around somewhere doing nothing. Normally everything is part of the operations plan to either have rolling stock in service or do some necessary maintenance on them, so they can't just say, okay, well, for the next 2 years we're going to take 1 or 2 train sets out of service continuously. So one example, when I did the planning for high capacity signaling in Perth, we actually ended up thinking about procuring 2 additional train sets just to accommodate this rolling program, where I would basically say, well, look, we take trains out of service from operation, but you're getting 2 other train sets instead. So your net number of trains that you can operate is still the same. And that basically allows us to do a rolling program for retrofitment. And at the end of the day, all you have is 2 excess train sets, which nobody will be sad about. Yeah, I mean, the operator would certainly be pleased if a project basically gifts them a couple of additional trains. And compared from a project point of view, compared to the hassle, what can happen to a project in terms of delays, in terms of cost overruns, if you don't have rolling stock available for fitment, it's probably turns out cheaper to just buy the 2 trains and then make someone happy. Yeah.
And you're right, and other jurisdictions have done that in the past, and that works. Yeah, the other thing I think that was probably in the favour of Kiwi Rail and even Hammersley to some extent was the number of loco fitments that were required. Yeah, isn't as large as what it is on some other, that you mentioned around with Sydney trains and things like that, where they've got a quantum much larger of rolling stock that they've actually got to deal with. So the problem does become more complex, but like you're saying, if you can somehow end up with a buffer, or you can add an extras, that's always a potential solution. Still comes down to how many locations have you got to be able to fit them up. There's a period of time involved with all the testing and proving before they then go back out to service.
Yeah. So you mentioned Australia is much larger in terms of economies of scale. So the spending there on railway projects, on rail infrastructure, which includes the signaling, is much bigger. And that's the reason why you have been working for many years now on the level crossing removal program in Melbourne. So let's talk about this for a moment. Firstly, for any of the readers who are not that familiar with the program, why is it such a big deal in Melbourne if all you're doing is removing a few level crossings? And I'm being facetious here. I know the program much better than I pretend to at the moment. But just for anybody who doesn't know about it, tell us briefly what the level crossing removal program is, why it's so important for Melbourne, and what it actually entails.
Yep. No, Melbourne is one of those cities in one respect that was well planned out, and in other respects it wasn't. So from a suburban point of view, we've got the largest light rail network in the world with our tram network here, which they've continued to expand on. And again, it's fabulous. But when you've got a light rail at grade in amongst traffic, it does face some challenges. The other challenge on our heavy rail with our suburban system was that we've got hundreds of grade level crossings. So we've, particularly around a very large suburban city like Melbourne is, which by area has now become the largest city in Australia. What we were facing, particularly during our peak times, and this is pre-COVID, we're talking around, of course, back in around 2015, was the closure times for a lot of those key crossings was really causing a lot of traffic congestion. And again, motorists were not impressed by the fact that with some crossings, they were being closed up, in worst case, up to 50 minutes in the hour during the peak times because of the frequency of the train network here. So decision was made by government at the time to get on and go and grade separate 25 level crossings. So that was the opportunity back then. Level crossing removal authority they were originally, we're now a level crossing removal project. So we come now under what they call the big build projects. So we're one of several major project delivery companies here delivering change, major change here in Melbourne with that. Our current program has actually got 110 level crossings to be removed, but already we've removed 74 of those. So during the last 5-7 years, we've come a long way with what we've been able to deliver as far as outcomes, and the change has been very significant with that. And it's always interesting when you start a project like that, and I wasn't involved right at the very early start of this. I came in 2018 when I came back over from New Zealand. But again, the project, the rate of level crossing removal, the ability to be able to remove these level crossings, and each project is a whole precinct redevelopment in its own state. Yeah, we've built over 45 new railway stations, for instance, and car parks and community services. So these are whole precinct redevelopments that we end up doing. And we're generally, our run rate has been now at about a level crossing a month. We're delivering an outcome with. So it just shows what we're able to do. If we translate that, for instance, back to what you're asking about New Zealand, they're just not, unfortunately, in the position to be able to provide that level of change. They can do it, but it will take longer. And again, to the Kiwis' credits, they're also looking at trying to solve some of the problems that they're facing over there with level crossings, as is other cities around Australia is doing the same. So we've had quite a few visits from different railway networks coming to have a look at the work that we do and learning from us as to how it can be done, and done a lot smarter these days as well. And I think that's also a benefit of what we do, because we've got a program of work, and we've had a very strong focus around continuous improvement, and that's delivered great change through all of that.
Yes. So for one thing is, I mean, you mentioned the original number of level crossings was 25, but I think that was always just meant to be the first bite of the cherry. That was never meant to be the entire program. I think the initial size of the program was closer to 75 or something like that. And the fact that you're now doing 110, and even that may not be the end of the line, seems to indicate to me that the program must have done something right, not just something, but a lot of things right in the eyes of the project sponsor, which is the government, in order to pump additional funding into that project and say, yep, we're doing more level crossings, even more than we initially planned with the first part of the program. So, and I think you already touched on maybe one of the key reasons why the program may have been so successful, which is the continuous improvement. So with level crossings, you may have a chance there to modularize your approach, but there's also risk there in somebody looking at it. And if you compare two level crossings, you will always find some differences. Yeah, that absolutely. I don't know, the road comes in at a different angle, and there's a set of traffic lights, which is, I don't know, 20 meters away on this crossing, but 50 meters away on that crossing. So there, despite the obvious potential for modularizing it and really start to cookie cut your level crossing renewals, there's always a risk of people making it maybe more complicated than necessary by just pointing at the differences and making every project a completely unique one. So how do you see that dichotomy, and how did you solve that?
I think and you're absolutely right. There's no standard crossing. There's elements of it that we've been able to come up with preferred solutions and modularize it, but also then have to customize it depending on the locality. So our crossing approach fundamentally ends up being one of four types of a solution. So either we end up taking the rail up, or we take it down into a trough, or we take a road up and over, or we take it under. So there's four different approaches that can be done to that. The next thing that's been a success with the project has then been community engagement, both with community, with councils. We work in a quite complex, multi-stakeholder environment. So again, while we've got good ideas, we've worked with the owners, with the asset owners ultimately that end up with us to try and determine what best fits that particular locality as well. Another benefit that we do have is because we have 5 very large alliances, so these are project teams that are working for us, delivering these outcomes, is we've got retained knowledge now because we've done a whole number of these. Clearly, if we're up to 74, we've learned a lot along the way, and we've got a pretty good idea of the sorts of risks that we face going into this. So again, the benefit of having the alliancing model that we've been using with this versus other contracting models is we've been able to be much more agile and work collaboratively as well with our delivery partners to be able to end up with good outcomes. And that's worked for us. The other thing with level crossings is it's almost a bit of a misnomer. While we talk around 110 level crossings, and you're right, there's likely to be more come along. Our project really is a brownfields delivery project delivery company these days, because we've been doing other works. We've been doing line duplications. We've been doing train stabling. We're even doing a tram maintenance facility at the moment. So a whole range of different types of rail-related works. Why are we doing it? Well, we've actually built up now a very good capability. And again, the government's been very good to recognise that. And actually, I think one of the key benefits is they've retained that team together to be able to keep delivering these works. And because we've been performing, we've continued to be able to deliver more works. And again, I think that's really key to it. And we compare, to other states where you come along, you do a major project, and that's it for some number of years. You lose that knowledge base. Everyone disappears somewhere else. And again, for us here on this major build, we're fortunate now. The program's ongoing. We're currently engaged through to 2030. So again, we've got a good period of time ahead of us, and while we're engaged, we'll keep delivering great outcomes.
It's a very important point you just touched on, the experience resource pool, which isn't there for granted. You've got to do something to maintain this. And on the supplier side, on the client side, the government has obviously some control how to retain a project team to an extent. By just offering more work. But the same also applies to the suppliers involved in those alliances. You've got to provide them with ongoing pipelines of work. If you just stop the one work package that they have and then you tell them, maybe you get something new in a couple of years or so, they would just demobilize and go home. They wouldn't even wait for 6 months, let alone for 2 years or more. So one of the tricks of these long ongoing program is really, once you have established a pool of capable suppliers and experienced suppliers who are relatively far up on their learning curves, you've got to keep them running, which requires some forward planning, of investment, of budgeting, of procurement, of all of those things. And if there's anything in that chain which causes a delay, for example, in procurement, then you may just lose part of your supply chain, probably for good, because it will be very hard to re-establish this later on without losing a lot of traction, a lot of learned things already. So a lot of experience will just be gone.
Well, the benefit of this, and you're right, with having a good program of works ahead of us, we've managed to effectively lock in the supply industry. That does in itself create some economies of scale from a cost point of view. We've continued to challenge. We're a very informed client, so we're able to challenge what the pricing is. The other one of the other key benefits that I've actually seen is the business has also been investing in its people. We talk a bit around rail signalling, and rail signalling, you never seem to have enough resources out there. And our business has actually funded a program where over that period of time there's been probably more than 50 rail signalling cadets come through our program where they work through a diploma in rail signalling. And again, I think it's terrific that we're able to leverage off a major delivery program like we're doing, but also investing back into the industry, because not all of those cadets that we've helped fund through this have obviously stayed with us, but the majority of them have stayed in the industry. And I think that's a fabulous outcome. And again, terrific for what we're able to do with the industry, because if you think back to the good old days where the railways used to be the ones that would train people up and invest in their resources, and I certainly came through a cadetship program early in my career. We moved away from that for about 20 odd years, and it created a big gap in the industry. And it's only been recent times there's been more of a focus there coming back about training. But we've created a situation where we're playing catch up. But again, particularly when we're doing this sort of quantum of work, there's never been such a great opportunity for a young person to be able to get involved, to learn about rail signalling than now. And again, it's been a key part of, even with my IRSE presidency with young people, just trying to find ways, how can we best support them? Because ultimately they're the future leaders of the industry. When our time comes and goes, they're the ones that are going to be stepping up and helping to lead the industry and where it's heading.
Yeah, I think Melbourne has really been very good with that. I'm not sure who learned from whom, but I've seen similar initiatives in the Metro Tunnel project in Melbourne. I've seen similar initiatives in the Suburban Rail Loop project, which is another upcoming mega project in Melbourne. So it's a success recipe, and it's definitely much more future-proof than the, I would say, traditional approach to basically poach resources from other big projects in the same area, and celebrate it as a success if you can snatch a few resources from Sydney or Brisbane or other places, which then means they are missing over there. So building up new stuff is certainly the way to go, and it's quite an admirable initiative. Now, let's talk about one aspect of big projects that may be a bit problematic. What I've seen a while ago is some criticism of the level crossing removal program, which I thought was grossly unfair to the program, in that it was said that the level crossing removal program worked not in favor of the existing signaling strategy for high capacity signaling, in that they cemented in the conventional business as usual signaling to their projects. And I thought, well, how else can it be if nobody else gives them any guidelines how to do it differently? So so there are, I think, examples where a coordination between several big build projects would have been required, but didn't happen in the way that was really necessary. And then in hindsight, pointing a finger at one project or the other isn't really the right way to go about, because the projects did what they deemed right at the time. So how do you see this possibly improving in the future? Or maybe you have already started to see some recent improvements. I don't know.
With it, I'm certainly not close to the particular situation you're quoting there. I think what you find, particularly where we've got, as part of the big build, we've got a number of major projects occurring where effectively you end up in the situation of a project working over another project, as well as even with the existing rail operator doing their own stuff as well. So it's actually quite a tricky environment. Coordination is key to this, and ultimately, that comes back to the oversight, be it through the state government having good oversight through through a network plan around what the outcome should actually look like. our program was stood up and is based around a business case and has certain requirements, which is obviously what we work to. At the end of the day, we're all trying to do the best. I think one of the initiatives that, and we fall under MTIA, which is the Major Transport Authority. One of the initiatives they have stood up here is with the Signalling Strategy Task Force. That's key around just trying to coordinate resources, just trying to coordinate projects, because even one of the challenges we face is from a disruptions point of view. We have planned works. You've talked about the tunnel job. And there's even roading works out there that impact rail as well. The idea with this of trying to have some sort of better coordination across it is just to ensure that you're not having additional unnecessary disruptions or taking blocks of line when you should better collaborate, so you do it once, not one after each other like that. And it's that whole coordination piece. I think with anything, this comes down to just planning and good communications. And there's always going to be some level of scope for hiccups with it, which is, I'd imagine, what you're referring back to in the past. At the end of the day, we've got a pretty good defined scope of what we're being asked to do. Some of that can move around at times, and we've had scope changes even through the life cycle of our project, and the same even for RPV as well. So again, I think as things keep evolving, we can only get better at this, and there is a good level of cooperation, and I think that has improved over the period of time as these major projects have got up and running anyway.
And I think one of the things that needs to be coordinated is the timing. You had a very valid point earlier when you said how helpful it is if the procurement of new rolling stock can be coordinated and aligned with the installation of onboard signaling equipment on those new locomotive or new trains. So if anybody had said the level crossing removal program should have used high capacity signaling, but at the same time, high capacity signaling is still being tested and implemented for the very first time on the Metro Tunnel project, one conclusion could have been, well, you just need to wait with your level crossing removal replacements until the Metro Tunnel is done, which means you wouldn't be at like 74 level crossings at the moment. You would be at ground zero, which is obviously not how it would work. So I think coordinating the timelines and having a certain technology that you want a project to use available by the time the project needs to use it, that's one of the big coordination efforts. Which
it is, Dr. Frank, but it's actually broader than that, and I've seen evidence even of our program of works where you're right, we've got a fixed program and we're being asked to deliver outcomes at certain times. I've seen situations both on the roading side of it and council where they've got planned works coming up, and what we try to do, and I mentioned around whole precinct redevelopments, there's other interface aspects where then the council takes advantage of that and does other works around that area. The timing of that may not always line up as well, it's at the end of the day, a call's got to be made to get on and do with it all.
Well, at the moment, you have a situation in Melbourne. You mentioned the signaling strategy work or initiative. So the strategy currently changed from previously CBTC based to now ETCS based. And I think that there are certain risks that there are finger point again in the future. Because the CBTC that's currently being implemented on the Metro Tunnel project was fully nice strategy at the time, and the decision was made to do that. From the new perspective of an ETCS strategy, that CBTC in Metro Tunnel stands out like a sore thumb. And I can almost see it coming in a few years down the line. And somebody said, how on earth would they have done this when the strategy is now dead? considering that the whole reason for that is an actual change of strategy after it was decided what the project would need to do. So how do you think with regards to that new strategy for high capacity signaling Melbourne based on ECS, what do you think can be done to make sure that will be successful? And going another 10 years in the future and then say, okay, let's think about yet another new strategy for high capacity signaling while we still have not very much to show for?
Yeah, I think what you're alluding to there, though, is quite some time back, a decision was made, and you look at how long it takes for these projects to get delivered. So even with Melbourne CBTC, how long that had been on the plan for, how long until they actually got to a contract award, and to now where we're heading towards, we're still a year or more away from it coming in service. What's happened over 10 years or more has been, technology has also moved on, and part of, I suppose, ongoing improvement, they've looked to sort of see, obviously back then a decision was made that they felt CBTC, based on what the information available at the time, that was considered the best solution for the Melbourne network. There's been further work done since that period of time. The review now indicates that ETCS is more of a suited technology across the Victorian network here. So that would seem where Victoria is leading, and it's not too dissimilar to what in other states. And you've also mentioned around also with New Zealand, where, and again, they pushed ahead and pushing ahead with ETCS over there and gaining the benefits of it. Each of the technologies, there's pros and cons that well with that. At the end of the day, the government's looking to see where do they, based on their spend, where do they get the best value out of it at the end of the day. Here in Melbourne, we're looking at having to manage a number of different train types of operation. CBTC is very good. If a captive fleet, you've got a locked-in network, and even the line that CBTC is being rolled out here in Melbourne. It's not a closed network line. We're still going to be running. Regional trains through sections of it. We're going to be running freight trains through the section. So again, that provides some challenges for it as well.
Mm-hmm. I'm conscious of the time we're also running out of this call. Obviously, I don't want to let go without talking about your current IRSE. It is something quite special, both in individual career of somebody working in the rail industry like yourself, but also from the point of view may or can on the global signaling industry. So tell us a little bit about your program, your 1 year presidency, what you set out to do, what the motto is, and what you think you...
Yep. So I was fortunate to step into the presidential role at the end of April last year. The real focus and part of my involvement in coming on board with this was to help drive more of a global focus within IRSE, which has been a very traditional sort of professional organisation. It headquartered of London, and as a part of that was seen to be very UK centric in the past. We've made some real efforts over the last few years as a run up to myself coming into the role to actually change that. And again, that's been off a range of strategic and tactical planning that we've been putting in place. And again, at the end of the day, we're a voluntary organisation, yet we're a professional organisation in the same respect. So, IRSE, as I look at it, has over 5,000 members spread across 52 countries. We run under the organisation on a section basis, what we call sections. So Australasia is one section, and we have 21 of those around. This was a really good chance for myself, being recognised coming into the role as president, to make that change. One of the simple changes we made, for instance, and this will continue ongoing, is we hold an annual general meeting every year. It's always been held within the UK. It was the first time in the history of it that was held outside of that, and we used technology. So the outgoing president came down to Melbourne, handed over to myself, and we held the AGM meeting here in Melbourne. But we live streamed it to the rest of the world, and we also recorded it. So again, really interested to see the hundreds of people that actually viewed it after it. And again, this was part of the reason my thing for the year around global integration had a real focus around people, process and technology. And each of those elements have been really key to work that we've been doing, particularly with people being young, the young members. I mentioned earlier about the future leaders, and we've put a lot of effort into helping to reinvigorate younger members sections, both here in Australasia and UK as a starter. We've been putting efforts into further training programs, mentoring programs and the likes. Our technology's been getting a bit of a shake-up there as well with IRSE to better improve some of the communications, our the whole management and the way we do things. But again, yeah, COVID was a good thing. It forced us online to have to do online meetings. What we have seen, and yeah, we've used our website for a long while. We've set up a whole body of knowledge now of videos on Vimeo. We use Vimeo channel rather than YouTube. And again, there's an excellent body of knowledge there, both from the various training seminars, presentations, but also mentoring work. So there's training videos, a whole raft of those that have gone up there that members can take benefit of. Probably one of the other highlights for me with this is been the opportunity to get around, as I have had some travel associated with the role. Yeah, people have asked me how have I managed the president's role, because it is a really busy time. I've been able to manage it actually leveraging off time zones. So on one hand, we've actually rotated the times that we hold our various management meetings, and I have a whole range of those. But traditionally, they used to be held around UK, 8 till 5, which meant often or not I'd be doing either the late evenings or night shift. We've now we rotate those meetings around, as I call, we share the love. But again, the reason for doing that is to actually encourage other members from around the world to be able to come on board. It was a bit of a negative for people that were outside of the UK, European time zones to be able to get involved because of the number of night shift meetings that you would encounter. These days, it's got more tenable, so that's worked. The benefit for the likes of myself, and would be the same in North America as well, is I'm able to still do my day job, and then I come home and I do my night job, as I call it. So again, that's made it manageable where I've juggled things. While it's a very busy year, and I knew that coming into it, I've been able to set it up. So again, a lot of my weekends I also invest into it. But I do it for the good of the industry as well. And it's something I'm able to give back to the industry because it's supported me very well over many, many years. Yeah, I was just going to say I've been working also with businesses to actually, businesses to support IRSE so they can support them back as well. And again, we've got some good traction now happening within that. Because at the end of the day, we need businesses, particularly supporting their staff, because that's been an area that we've seen there's been a tendency to sort of move away from that. They expect the industry to support their staff without them. And I think it was fabulous. Recently, we held Aspect, which is run every 2 years by IRSE, which is a highly technical conference. We ran that down here in Melbourne. It was a full week, so Monday to Friday. 2 days of site visits, 3 days of technical papers. And it was fabulous to see that it was a sold out event. We had over 400 delegates come along, which was twice what it would normally be. It's the largest Aspect ever. But again, it was wonderful with the business support that we got on that. We had 25 major sponsors came on board with that, and everyone was blown away with the benefits from the business point of view that they achieved out of that. And I think that's fabulous. People were hanging out for some face-to-face, and I think it's come back to that sort of balance of some online, but people are still hanging out to have face-to-face meetings and conferences and things like that. And we had nearly 100 people come in from overseas for this. So again, it showed the appetite that was there for people to want to come attend the conference, networking, and actually one of the good tests for us. Everyone was very appreciative of the quality of the papers and the presentations, and it's always a good test when you get to day 3 of a conference like that that's been full on. And the numbers in the auditoriums were still there. We didn't see the drop off that you sometimes see with some conferences. So again, out of that conference, we've built a very good knowledge base out of it, because we've also videotaped it. Delegates have got access to that information at the moment, and we'll make that more broadly available during the year to come.
I wanted to take the opportunity on behalf of the industry to thank you for your engagement as the IRSE president. Some people may think, that's more an egoistical thing than anything, but actually, if you look at the work involved that you just touched briefly on, there's probably much more to say about this, then most people would say, that's not for me. I wouldn't do that. And if everybody had this opinion, then we would never have an IRSE president. We would never have political leaders. We would never have other people who do these things voluntarily, because what's not to forget is you don't get paid for this. I guess even most of the travel, definitely the time you need to make available is out of your own pocket, out of your own reserves. And I think there's a very big thank you just you for that initiative and for this giving back to the industry, as you mentioned. So thank you, Steve.
No, and thank you for that. But the thing I would say is, not every, there can only be one president each year. And again, I've been fortunate. But the thing is, what I recognise is this is a whole team effort. And again, I think we're really fortunate that we have willing volunteers that are, able to do, even if it's a one-off event, or we have other people that are willing to continue to help out. That's what makes it a success. I've been fortunate to perhaps help lead some of the initiatives and set things and set the wheels in motion. But it's the team behind me that are actually, they're really part of the success as well. And that was evident with Aspect. I had a fabulous committee we worked with, a big effort. But again, it was really great to see the outcome with it. So that kind of makes it worthwhile. I'm pleased. Probably the role is only a year. The role in the president is a year. It's this whole commitment is a 5-year journey in its own right. So I will finish up at the end of April as far as the outward facing type portion of it. I then have ongoing obligations as well. But again, like I've said, I'm keen to see us to continue to develop it. And from an IRSE point of view, I think that's particularly important, that we need to stay relevant for today. We've been around since 1912. Long time, and it's what do we need to keep doing, and we have been driving change. We're not perfect, but we're getting a lot better, and I think the fact that we're still seeing growth in membership recognises that as well. But there's more we can be doing. And the other thing, again, the opportunity I had with Aspect, particularly with a large number coming under, I have a council, which is effectively it's a management committee, and we meet regularly. But with us, what we do is we at least meet once a year face to face where we can. So we leverage off the likes of Aspect or convention as a good reason to sort of kill 2 birds with one stone. I had the majority of council members here in Melbourne, and we spent a full day, a day before Aspect on the Sunday. I had them locked away, and we had a strategy session for that. And again, that will set us up for the next number of years with a number of strategic decisions that we've been actually made. We've got a number of working groups that are setting up around that as we continue to sort of address where the industry is going. And again, that's really important because a bit like you mentioned earlier, technology changes. We've got to stay up with that change, and the industry is changing. I think with the work we've been doing with the younger people is great. But again, what a younger person needs today is very different to what it was in my day. And I've been fortunate as I've got around a number of businesses, both here in Australia and over in Europe, to go and see some fabulous test labs, for instance, as an example. And I think, how do we provide an environment that young people want to get involved in and work, not just sitting down, at a general desk, but they're actually being given opportunities to be able to operate within a test lab environment and actually do some terrific work. And again, I think the initiative businesses are taking with that is really good, but it's necessary. And it also allows us to do a lot of work offline before we get out into the rail environment, because it's more difficult these days to actually get out trackside than what it used to be. So we've got to be a bit smarter around that.
Okay, 3 pillars of a successful future: having a strategy, having the will to change, and putting emphasis on teamwork. Steve, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciated our talk, and I wish you all the best for your last 2-3 months of your presidency, and hopefully you haven't got too much to do afterwards, because I guess you're probably glad when it's over at some stage.
Ask me afterwards, but no, thank you very much. I think there's more good work to happen between now and then, but I'm positive that IRSE will certainly continue to grow and develop in the years to come as well.
Fantastic. Thank you very much again. To all the listeners, if you like this episode, then please also check in with the interview that I had with the previous IRSE president, with Steve's predecessor, Andy Knight. And as usual, if you like this podcast, then please tell a friend about it, subscribe, watch the other episodes, and until next time, keep it simple and bye for now.
Thank you. Bye.
Hi, this is Doc Frank from the studio. I want to inform you about my latest and greatest training development, and it is all about the mindset of a high-capacity railway organization. What I found in my experience of training and consulting is that often you have projects for new technology which seem to be perfectly planned, which are very well executed, and they still don't lead to the success that was expected. And very often the reason for that is mindset. Key stakeholders that have what I call a legacy mindset, an outdated old ways of thinking, where the new technology is treated in the same way as the old one, but it's just not suitable to get the most out of the new technology. What I'm offering in this training course, which is called High Capacity Railway Mindset, is that every month there's a new training module with 5 examples of an outdated legacy mindset, the suggestion of a new mindset more suitable for a high capacity railway, and how to get from the old to the new mindset. So those modules will be repeated every month for an entire year. So in total, we are talking about 60 different examples how to get from an old mindset to a more suitable new mindset. And the cost for this is only $10 per example. So this can be paid monthly, this can be paid for a year. And then you have the usual service of an alumni community afterwards, where you can ask ongoing questions for at least 12 months after the training. You find more information and you can sign up on my training portal, docfranktraining.podia.com/mindset. I hope I see you at this training. It's really leading edge stuff. Nobody else in the world is training on this. And if you really want to explore the ultimate frontier of success in technology projects, then this is the training you need to take. Hi, it's Doc Frank again. I hope you liked today's episode. I like to keep it as simple as possible, so I only have one single request for you. If you like this podcast, please tell your friends and colleagues about it. That's all I want, because that's a service that I'm providing to the industry, and I would like as many people as possible to listen to this podcast and learn something from it. So please share. And until next time, keep it simple and bye for now. Thank you for listening.